Simply, a military invention is one that was invented by the military in order to improve and advance certain military tactics, missions, or overall existence. Today, many of the most common military inventions, such as GPS or the internet, are used by civilians as well. When thinking about military inventions, you probably think about things such as high-tech military airplanes like the stealth bomber, nuclear bombs, ballistic missiles, night visions, the Humvee, and many others. All of these inventions have been pretty successful in their use. However, there have been inventions that the military has come up with that don't work out at all. Whether it's the US military or Japan, some inventions just haven't worked. And in the video today, 10 of them. Number 10. The Corkscrew Tank. Invented by the Russians, the Corkscrew Tank was created in order to make its way across rough, rocky, and harsh terrain. The vehicle was able to maneuver across terrain such as snow and ice, which is common in Russia, and it proved to be somewhat profitable. While it was able to do some of the things it was designed to do, it had many downsides. For one, because of the extremely large corkscrews used, the tank wasn't able to move across decent terrain. Also, it was heavy, which made it very slow, and it lacked suspension and safe steering. Number 9. One-wheel tank or ball tank. This one, by the Germans, the one-wheel tank was made in order for one man to be able to utilize 2 machine guns while being inside of a heavily armed sphere. However, this invention never made it out of prototype. In reality, there's no way this invention would have proved helpful to any military member. Steering the tank was quite a challenge, but it was fairly fast for an invention of its time. Number 8. Scooter-mounted cannon. Used by the French during the Vietnam War, this vehicle was put together when the French military was lacking the money to provide more sophisticated equipment. They used what they had and often had to improvise in order to keep the military equipped. The scooter-mounted cannon was a scooter-like vehicle that held a 75mm cannon. The vehicle was mainly used by paratroopers during the 1950s. However, it's safe to say that this didn't last long, as it surely offered no type of protection or even stability during war. Number 7. Focke-Wulf Triebfluegel. At the beginning of time, no one could ever imagine being able to fly through the air. However, through the genius of inventors, it absolutely became possible. During World War II, the Germans were able to create a working helicopter. Though the aircraft was able to get off the ground and get from point A to point B and land properly, the Nazis, they wanted more. To add more to their invention, they began to use ramjet engines. The Focke-Wulf Triebfluegel soon became useless, as it was much too hard to land with the rocket strapped to its propeller blades. Number 6. Puckle Gun. The Puckle Gun was created by James Puckle, who was a writer and lawyer from London. He created what he called the defense gun, while others deemed it the Puckle Gun. No matter what you want to call it, this gun didn't go very far. First made in order to fire against Christian enemies and later to fire upon Muslim Turks, the Puckle Gun was never able to do its task. Created with a tripod-mounted, single-barreled flintlock with a multi-shot revolving cylinder, the gun was able to shoot 63 shots in 7 minutes, compared to the more common 3 shots per minute. The Puckle Gun drew few investors and never achieved mass production or sales to the British Armed Forces, mostly because British gunsmiths at the time couldn't easily make the many complicated components. Number 5. Cybernetic walking machine. The cybernetic walking machine seems like something you'd find in a sci-fi movie. It was an experimental robot tested in 1968, designed by Ralph Mosher, and the machine was supposed to allow the infantry to carry weapons over extremely tough terrain. The robot was controlled by a human through the use of foot and hand movement. There were also hydraulics, but sadly the robot never went into production. However, the prototype can be found at the US Army Transportation Museum in Virginia. The robot weighs about 3,000 pounds and is only able to go 5 miles per hour. Number 4. Russian Tsar tank. The Russian Tsar tank literally resembles those bikes you'd see with one huge tire and one small one, a tricycle design. For some reason, the Russians thought that this was somehow a safe and usable defense in wartime. There isn't any proof that it was ever used in battle, and it seems that it just stayed in the testing stage. The huge wheels were intended to cross significant obstacles. However, due to miscalculations of the weight, the back wheel was prone to get stuck in soft ground and ditches, and the front wheels were sometimes insufficient to pull it out. This led to a fiasco of tests before the High Commissioner in 1915. The tank remains in the location where it was tested, some 60 kilometers from Moscow, NATO until 1923, when it was finally taken apart for scrap. Number 3. Charles de Gaulle. The Charles de Gaulle is probably the most recent invention on this list. Though not a new invention, it was supposed to be an aircraft carrier that used new and improved technology. However, it has proven to be anything but. It was first made in 1986 and weighed about 40,000 tons. It cost over $4 billion, and the French truly believed it would be the next big thing. It is the 10th French aircraft carrier, the first French nuclear-powered surface vessel, and the first and only nuclear-powered carrier built outside of the United States Navy. However, this carrier was much slower than the one it was meant to replace, which ran on steam. The propellers didn't work right, and the company who produced them went out of business. The engine and nuclear reactor were poorly built and incorrectly installed, causing exposure to radiation. The deck was also designed wrong and was not usable as a means to defend the ship. Number 2. Rocket belt. The rocket belt was made in order to allow a soldier to travel safely over a very small distance. It can be compared to a bit of a leap. The rocket belt was created in the 1960s and seemed to be promising. During October 1961, the pack was demonstrated personally to President John F. Kennedy at Fort Bragg. However, come the mid-1960s, the military was no longer interested in the rocket belt. Because of its short range, the military didn't see much use for it. The maximum duration of flight was 21 seconds, and it had a range of 120 meters. The military also lost interest in this invention, as jet and other aircraft technology was advancing very rapidly. Number 1. Flying aircraft carrier USS Macon, USS Akron. The flying aircraft carrier was first crafted by German engineers in the early 1930s. Prague-born engineer Dr. Carl Arnstein of Ohio was the one who built the aircraft, which first took flight in April 1933. The first was called the USS Macon, and later the USS Akron, a sister ship, was built. They were both blimp-like and not shaped like today's aircraft carriers. The USS Macon was able to carry 5 F-9C Sparrowhawk airplanes that could be launched as well as retrieved during flight. Unfortunately, the USS Macon crashed on February 12, 1935 due to a structural failure during a storm. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Also, why not check out another channel I do called Today I Found Out, that is linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching.